Hi, everyone. Thank you for spending time with me today and welcome to my e-commerce and alternative selling methods webinar. My name is Christopher Garcia and I'm the Small Business Development Specialist of the Sbdc at UNM Valencia campus. I created this webinar based on a great article, partly based on a great article called Selling Without a Store. And I have a great follow-up email for you guys and I'm going to show it to you now. Just so you know that I'm going to send you things to follow up and you don't have to take so many notes. So here's the follow-up email for today's webinar. And here's all the things that I will mention today. And they're Selling Without a Store by Tamara E. Holmes right there. She wrote that article in 2012, but she was way ahead of her time.
Hey, Chris, I just want to let you know that we're still on the, were you showing us a screen? Because I'm just seeing the start screen.
Thank you, Leslie. You should be able to see the follow-up email now.
Yes.
And there's the Selling Without a Store article on which this webinar is based. And there's a ton of other things that I'll talk about throughout the webinar. And I want to introduce Leslie Everson. She's our lovely coordinator today. Thank you, Leslie, for keeping us in line.
You're welcome. Always enjoy the hour and a half that I spend on this webinar, Chris, because it's great information.
Thank you. Okay, there's my contact information on the screen, but it will also be emailed to you in the follow-up email. Okay, before we begin, let's go over some webinar ground rules. Everyone on the call right now is muted, so don't worry about background noise, the dog barking, or anything like that. There's a feature to raise your hand, and I'll use it to make sure the webinar is flowing. In fact, everyone who could see my slides and hear me, can you raise your hand for me, just to make sure you're able to do it? Perfect. I could see a lot of hands raised. Thank you for that. If you don't know how to raise your hand, it should be in your Zoom controls. It's a black ribbon with the, maybe there might be a green highlighted area. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A feature. And it should be either at the top or the bottom of your screen. And then I'll answer the questions at the end of the presentation. And each slide is numbered, so please include the slide number if you'd like to revisit the slide. In fact, I want to test the Q&A right now. So if you could do me a favor and put a hi, hello, how are you in the Q&A, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Maya. Hi, Gabe. Hi, Michael. Oh, we have two Michaels. Hi, Michael. Oh, we have another Michael too. Hi, Michael. Hello. Perfect. I don't think I have to worry about any of you on the call today. Let me close some of these hellos. Hello, Dylan. Perfect. I think we're flowing pretty good. And let's see, these are some old training offerings, but I know you love to update us on the most up-to-date training. So if you want to talk about the trainings, you go right ahead.
Sure, I do. Right after this, we're going to have basic steps to starting a business in New Mexico, which is always such great information. We also have how to formulate a business plan. It's a two-part series. So part one's coming up on how to formulate the business plan. Then you can attend part two on implementing your business plan. We have a bilingual session on accessing financial resources. We have phone app. Is it good for your business? Do you need one? And then next week, visit nmsbdc.org because I have I have 8 webinars at no cost for you next week.
Thank you, Leslie. And that link is at the bottom of the screen right here. It's the www.nmsbdc.org. But I have faith you know where to find the webinar since you all signed up for this one. Here's a graphic of our center locations throughout New Mexico. And the mission of the SBDC is to build skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses by offering no-cost confidential business consulting and lower no-cost trainings, such as this one. You'll notice a small blurb on the bottom of the slide, and this is the disclaimer from our stakeholder, the Small Business Administration. So we're partially funded by the Small Business Administration, and we're mostly funded by the state of New Mexico. So those are our two stakeholders. So this is your tax money at work. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the SBDC in the next few slides. Let's talk about the services of the SBDC. We offer two major services, again, confidential business consulting and lower no-cost business training, and there are no limits to how much no-cost counseling you can receive. We have centers throughout New Mexico, so there'll be one close to you. And if you look at the graphic in the upper right-hand corner, it shows what we do: renew, grow, launch, and start up small businesses. We welcome you to our statewide trainings like this one and to participate in your centers, webinars, and workshops. And as the restrictions from COVID start to wane, hopefully, we'll start to offer more center-related workshops and webinars. So check our website for more information. This slide shows what we expect from our clients. My fellow business advisors and center directors want you to succeed, so you'll be assigned homework or further research, so please do the work necessary to succeed. We can't make decisions for you or offer tax or legal advice. We could only connect you to the information you need to make an educated decision. And part of making an educated decision is working with licensed professionals like attorneys and accountants, because we really can't give out that legal or tax advice. I could give you some tips, and I'll give you some resources in this webinar today. Finally, I want to remind you about important surveys we send out as part of attending these trainings. Everyone who registered for this webinar received an email from Leslie Everson saying, in anticipation of the upcoming e-commerce and alternative selling methods webinar event that you have registered for, we would like to collect some preliminary information from you. With this information in hand, we can tailor the course material to better fit your needs. So just by a show of hands, I want to see how many of you received the pre-webinar evaluation by email. Good. Good. At least half of you raised your hand. I'm very happy that you got that. Please, the other half, please check your spam box or your clutter mailbox, because our emails have a habit of landing up in there. You could also take the survey by signing in to your account on our website. And if you didn't get that, or you have any more questions, please reach out to me or Leslie Everson, and we'll be happy to help you with that. In addition to the pre, you'll get a post-webinar evaluation survey by email. Please do both. And remember, check your clutter and your spam. Okay, first of all, I want to cover with you the importance of a marketing plan when adding a selling method or changing a selling method. Online sales is all about, or selling in a different way, is all about identifying your target markets, analyzing your product or service offerings, creating a profitable pricing strategy, and successfully distributing your product and service, and effectively promoting your product and service. So when I talk about a marketing plan, your first step is to identify your target markets. Then you may have heard the 4 Ps of marketing. We get into the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion. And a best practice is to create benchmarks and track results. And I want to refer you guys to some further learning you could do. The Small Business Administration has a great website, the SBA.gov Learning Center. And they actually have let's go off of the follow-up link, because I think the links work better on that document. So let's go to the follow-up email. So here's SBA's Marketing 101 guided online webinar workshop sort of thing. And they go into a bunch of different videos about what is marketing. And when I do a marketing webinar, I often use this curriculum. And my favorite part are the worksheets at the very bottom. And if there's anything you take away from this lecture about marketing, it's to go to the SBA's website and at least take a look at the Marketing 101 checklist. This will help you put your marketing activities into perspective and give you tips about what you should be doing or could be doing. And the Marketing 101, a guide to winning customers. If you do this for any sort of new selling activity you do, you'll be very successful. So again, we went in the same order: identifying your target market, and then getting into the 4 Ps of marketing. And then, of course, here are the formulas for tracking and calculating your results of your marketing campaigns. The one that I find most helpful is the return on investment. And I might talk about that a little later. If you have any questions or want to get further into this, put that in the Q&A and we could visit it during the end of the webinar. Let me go back to the slideshow. And at any time during this webinar, I'm talking to you about a document and you're not seeing it, please raise your hand or put something in the Q&A so I know that you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Oh, I'm still on marketing, sorry. Okay. Every activity you do in your business should align with your target market or markets because these are the customers most likely to purchase your product or service, aka those customers you don't mind spending money on. If you think everybody in the United States is your target market, think again. You'll probably go broke promoting your product or service to everybody in the United States. So create a perfect customer in your mind. And then you could have more than one customer, and or you could cater to business. Then describe him, her, or it. And I'll show you a great research tool offered to you at no cost by the Sbdc to find these markets. For example, this example we're going to use is somebody who makes and sells women's clothing in Belen, New Mexico. And they want to take their business online because their sales are down due to COVID-19 closures. The ideal customer is a woman with a household income of $100,000 or more who purchases high-end clothing and shops online. If the clothing that's being sold was Western wear, you might look at those women with interest in bull riding, farming, and country music. If your products are modeled after a famous country music singer, you might target those who listen to, say, the music of Taylor Swift. Now that we've identified an ideal customer or our target market, we can tailor our products and services to fit their needs and wants. A research tool I'll talk about later suggests the most popular products in women's clothing are accessories, tops, bottoms, dresses, and outerwear. The store has also been selling products in store, so they know what are hot sellers, high profit items, and unique to that store. It's important to keep your online inventory lean because you are charged per posting, per photograph, and per sale in some cases. It's also very time consuming to photograph items, write descriptions, post them online, accept orders, ship, and handle returns and exchanges. So I want to show you that research tool. It's called IBIS World. So if you're just banging your head, or maybe you want some more insights about who or what your target market is, IBIS World is a document put together by economists that tell you give you insights into industries. They're called industry reports. And if you would raise your hand for me, are you seeing the university libraries IBIS World or my login right now? Okay, very good, thank you. So I like to use the example of restaurants, or we could use retail trade in the US since we're talking about a clothing store. And this report was put together by Ms. Thomas on July 2021. And I'll go over the high points of one of these reports with you. And if there's one thing you do to visit with the Sbdc counselor, it's to get one of these reports because they're only available through your Sbdc center. Because we pay a lot of money for these databases, and one of these reports could cost you up to $1,200 if you were to buy one. Let me get larger for us. So the high points of this report includes your key external drivers. I also like to call these key economic drivers. So these are things that happen in the economy that will drive business up or down for you. So per capita disposable income is in the retail trade. So as that goes up, this industry will go up. Consumer confidence index, how people feel about the economy. Consumer spending, are people spending money? National unemployment rate, I'm guessing as that goes down, this will go up. Number of households, I'm guessing as that number goes up, retail will do better in that area. And population. And then it gives you your first and second tier suppliers. And then it gives you your first, and if you have first and second tier buyers, it'll give you both. So let's see, for the retail trade, consumers in the US, that's a big one. E-commerce and online auctions in the US, and different other industries that consume in this industry. Let's see what the drivers are doing. So this is between 2016 and 2021. Looks like national unemployment rates staying pretty steady. Consumer confidence index seems to be rising. Same for per capita disposable income, the number of households, consumer spending, and population. So the revenue in this industry is projected between 2016 and 2026 to stay about the same. Profit is expected to grow in this industry. The profit margin is 3.1. So when I see a low profit margin, that means 3 cents out of every dollar goes into your business's profit. That's telling me you really have to sell a lot. You have to be a powerhouse there. And it looks like profit margin is going to grow slightly over that period, or it grew slightly over this period. The number of businesses looks like it's going to stay steady across 2016 to 2026. Employment, the same trend, and wages, the same trend. Now here we get into products, since we're talking about the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. Product, here are the major products in this industry. So motor vehicle and parts dealers, general merchandise stores, non-store retailers, online stores, or pop-up shops, building materials and garden equipment and supply dealers, food and beverage stores, and health and personal care stores. So if I was in this industry, I might want to be it looks like a motor vehicle parts dealer. They tend to hog that industry there. Gives you a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Talks about the key external drivers, and you may hear about that the V-shaped recovery in the news. That means everything tanked in 2020 and is expected to rise and go back to pre-COVID levels. And I promise I'm going to get to that marketing target market part soon. So here are your major markets in the retail industry. Individuals aged 45 to 64 is your largest market. That might be the market where you want to spend money. Individuals aged 25 to 44 is your second largest market, and it goes down from there. And those are the high points I wanted to go over with you in this report. So let me stop sharing this and let me share my slideshow again, and then we'll continue to talk about marketing plan. Okay, now let's talk about price. Price is a very important factor in online sales. You might have lower overhead when selling online, but you have other costs to think about, like posting fees, payment fees, monthly subscription fees, yearly website fees, website or online store maintenance, time for fulfilling orders, time for customer questions and emails, and time for returns and exchanges. It also entails navigating through websites, online marketplaces, and payment processors. Do you have the skills or do you need to hire somebody to do this? There may be other online sellers selling your product for more or less, so research the selling price online. And there are two common methods for setting a price: cost plus and market pricing. If you have a unique product, you can set a price by figuring the cost and adding a markup. If you sell a common product, you can research the selling price on online marketplaces by visiting stores or store websites and doing maybe a Google shopping search. And you could set your price based on what other people are selling your same product for. So we're selling online in this opinion. So we talked about price, now we're into place. Place or distribution important. It's because we have more choices than ever for selling products online and fulfilling orders. You can choose to sell your products from your website. You can use an online marketplace. You could offer delivery or pickup to your storefront, or you could use a third-party app for pickup like Amazon Hub. And I thought it was pretty neat. They have an Amazon Hub here in Los Lunas, New Mexico at the Allsubs. So after figuring out our product price and place, you can think about promotion. There are more ways to promote your business than ever before. Some common methods are blogging, creating a website, personal selling, social media marketing, word of mouth, and getting reviews. So if you're selling online, those reviews are gold, and other media. When picking a promotion method, keep your target market and budget in mind. And some interesting ways to promote your product online include paying or giving free merchandise to bloggers and vloggers to promote your product in their article or video. And think about unboxing videos or lifestyle experts on YouTube. You could use social media paid ads. So in Facebook, you could actually use this IBIS World Report, target people 45 to 64 with certain interests in a certain location. And the most important thing I think anybody online who already has a business or plans to go into business could do today is to claim your Google My Business profile. And I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to show you how to get to Google My Business. So it's google.com/business. I guess I've been there once or twice before. I'm signed into the center's Gmail account. You have to have a Gmail account to claim your Google My Business profile. So I'm going to sign in. Let's look at the Los Lunas Small Business Development Center's page, and you have to have a physical presence or a service area to get a Google My Business profile. We have a physical location, so we could change information. And Google works, they're information brokers, so they want the most up-to-date information about you to better serve their clientele. So in giving you this profile, you help them by updating your information, putting pictures of your products or services or your storefront or more information online, and helping people know when you're open and closed, if there's special dates, having the most up-to-date phone number. You could enter your products or services. So if you sell online and you're selling directly from a small website, you could enter your products in and where to buy them and what their price is. So when people go to Google, search for things they want to shop for and go to Google Shopping, your products will appear. You could talk about attributes for the business. If you're a woman-owned business or a minority-owned business, they often have a little sticker you could apply for. You could put in a description about your business, which is a great marketing tool to have, opening date, and then you could add photos. And when you do that, you could start to gain insights about what's happening with your Google profile. So for instance, it looks like 250 people discovered the Small Business Development Center online. It looks like 16 found us from our branded content, so maybe from our Sbdc website, and 49 people directly searched for Los Lunas Small Business Development Center. You could use something like this to track. So these are views on your listing. So if I were to do a marketing campaign, say a radio ad, or I paid a blogger or vlogger to vlog about my product or service, you could gauge on this date that I have an increase in viewers to my website. Here's customer actions. They visited your website. Did they call you? If you're wanting to drive people to your website, you should make sure people are visiting your website. And when are they visiting your website? Is it during a promotional campaign? Did I change my price? Did I offer a coupon? And then one of my favorite things about this Google My Business profile is if you don't have a website, they give you a free website based on the information you put in your Google My Business profile. So say you're doing a pop-up shop, you don't necessarily want to pay $300 to create a website for a year. This is a great option for you. Say you're a food truck, you really don't need an online store. Great option for you. You only have a few options and themes, but I think it looks pretty good, and it's all the information you need in a website. They give you a free web address. This one happens to be, let me move my remote controls, los-lunas-small-business.business.site. But I could also purchase a URL if I wanted to. That's what the web addresses are called, URLs. And if I wanted to purchase Los Lunas-Small Business Development Center, Sbdc.com, I could do that for $12 a year. And I'm well versed in using Google My Business and source centers throughout New Mexico. So if you want to learn more about this, please make an appointment with your local Sbdc. So let's go back to our slideshow. And I think we're product, price, place, distribution. I think all we have to cover is a little bit more about promotion. Okay. When picking a promotion method, always keep your target market in mind. So always remember that. Keep your target market in mind. After making the decisions you need with the 4 P's of marketing and your target market, think of promotional goals like reaching 100,000 viewers on a Facebook ad, track your results, and calculate your return on investment. So say you spend $100 on a Facebook campaign and you reach 75,000 viewers, the cost per viewer is less than a penny. So you have a great return on investment. And to learn more about marketing, please take a look at that SBA lesson and those worksheets on their Marketing 101 on their website. Okay, this is a big thing to cover in a small amount of time. So let me look at the Q&A. Make sure we don't have any questions about marketing. So Michael asks, did you say you have to have a physical location to sign up? So you either have to have a physical location or a service area to sign up for Google My Business. So if you have a physical location, you get the full Google My Business profile. You get let me go back to it. You get the full profile, as you can see here with that young woman. And then you see call, direction, save, website. If you have a physical location, you'll get that full profile. If you only have a service area, you'll show up on maps. So when people look for, I don't know, a dentist near me, and they go to maps, if you only have a service area, you'll only show up here. And you'll show up as a balloon with a dot in it. And the buildings are the physical locations. And you get the free website whether or not you have a physical location or a service area. So I hope that clarifies that for you. Perfect. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this webinar. So let's talk about selling online. Many people think it's less expensive and easy to sell online, but that isn't always the case. You must research your options, fees, and staffing to make sure you have the time and manpower to successfully sell online. There are 2 options for selling online. You could sell directly from your website / using a third-party sales site like Shopify, or by using an online marketplace like Amazon, Etsy, or eBay. The pro of selling from your website is you save on marketplace fees. The con is you're doing all your own marketing, search engine optimization, web maintenance, you're tracking orders on your own, and you're taking on the liability of processing and storing sensitive data. Using an online marketplace or a third-party app is easier because they process payments for you, they track orders for you, they create policies, your buying and selling policies, they market your product across the web. So for instance, if you sold something on Etsy, remember I was talking to you about listing your products for sale on the Google My Business, Etsy does that for you. They allow your products to be found in Google searches. So that makes it a little easier on you. And they market across the web to their existing customers. So if you ever sign up for eBay or Etsy or one of those sort of places, you probably receive at least 10 emails a day. And they also have an established clientele. If you don't have a website already, you have to create one. And whether you use a web designer or an online web builder, they call them WYSIWYG builders. What you see is what you get. There are 3 components to every website: the domain or the web address, the URL, the code or what we see, and the host for putting your website online. All these have costs associated with them. They require monthly or annual payment. You have to maintain your account. And my best advice to you is choose your provider wisely. It bothers me because there's a lot of fraud that happens with website development. But remember, 3 parts to a website: domain, the script or what we see, and the host. You could buy all of them from one person. You could buy one from each. And if you want to go deeper into that, put a question in the Q&A and we could talk more. When opting to sell online, ask yourself if you have the processes and staff to successfully sell online. There must be someone to list items, change prices, photograph your items, which is something I have trouble with, the photography. Write product descriptions, maintain a website or e-commerce profile, return customer emails, fulfill orders, ship orders, and handle returns and exchanges. Each marketplace is different, and you have to use one and you can use one or many, but they all require time. And your garden will never grow unless you bless it with your time. So fees for most marketplaces or third-party apps run about 10% for product listing and payment processing. Some marketplaces have monthly fees when you use a business account. And of course, if you're a small business, it's best practice to use a business account. That just means instead of your social security number, they use your EIN or employer identification number. And then they often charge for adding extra photos, adding videos, or paying for SEO, search engine optimization, or keywords. And those things all have fees associated with them. So make sure you're only doing what you're able to handle and afford. Don't waste money posting items across all e-commerce sites using an e-commerce management software if you're only selling maybe 10 things a month. And always keep the interest of your target market in mind and use those distribution channels that appeal to them. So if you were selling auto parts, Etsy probably wouldn't be the place for you. So here's a listing of some of the most popular e-commerce sites. And most of us know the top 3, Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. And there are many options vying for your money. So choose your marketplace or marketplaces very carefully and always keep the interest of your target market in mind. Since online marketplaces make more money as you sell more products, the bigger ones have great learning resources and customer service. So keep that in mind. In the follow-up email, I included some links for Amazon Sellers Academy, eBay Sellers Guide, and Etsy Sellers Educational Portal, and Shopify Sellers Academy. They also have great blogs and seller events. So say you, and then let me tell you what would be good for each. So if you sold maybe you produced handbags, women's handbags, Amazon might be a good option for you. If you sold vintage clothes, eBay or Etsy might be a good portal for you. And if say you sold hand knit women's cardigans, Etsy would probably be your best bet. Sites like Shopify are e-commerce marketplaces that offer web design services or connect easily to your existing website. And large WYSIWYG website builders offer e-commerce apps. So say Wix, WordPress, and Weebly, they may use different third-party apps or offer their own. Perfect. So let's talk about some other aspects of online sales. When selling online, product photography is vital to your success. As you can see from the image on the left, it has bad lighting, isn't very attractive. It looks like something picture that I took. And the picture on the right has good lighting and has photo effects added. It makes that clamato look almost angelic. And the difference speaks for itself. If you don't have experience with product photography, take a look at Shopify's article and do it yourself. You could hire a local photographer, and they're probably hurting now because of COVID restrictions. You could use a stock image website, or ask if you wholesale a product, ask your wholesalers if they have images you could use. Be careful when using photos found online because they may be copywritten. And I wanted to show you some examples. So here are the two guides that I include: the Definitive DIY Guide to Beautiful Product Photography and the Beginner's Guide to Product Photography. When I started selling online, I first started selling books. We didn't need pictures. They worked off of ISBN numbers. When I started selling on eBay and Etsy, I needed to photograph things, and I really do wish I would have read these articles before I started doing that. Here's another option for hiring somebody to do your product photography or edit your images. Websites like Fiverr, Upwork, TaskRabbit, they are like a classified listing of different contractors who want to provide a service for you, and they list their services for sale on these websites. So for instance, for starting at $15, this person will shoot professional and creative product photography for you. And these are great. This is absolutely vital when selling online. If you don't have the expertise and you can't do it, please find somebody who has that expertise for you. And then stock image websites. These are websites. I believe this website takes us to Adobe Stock. You could buy photographs to use. So if you're creating a website on your own, you can't just pull an image off Google and expect to use it for free. You could pay to, say, I like to use the example of a can opener. So say I wanted to just put a generic image on my website. This is a great way for me to do that without infringing on any copyrights. If you do a Google search, maybe you want to look for images that you can use, you could do that. So let's go to google.com. And let's do can opener, since we're on a can opener roll. And you go to images, and all the images that appear, they may be subject to copyright or trademark. We don't know. You could go to tools, you could go to usage rights, and you could go to Creative Commons licenses. And these images may be available for you to use in some of your promotional activities. But they're not going to be the best, let me tell you. The really nice ones tend to be copywritten or trademarked. And it's best practice just to take the images yourself so you don't have to deal with any of that, because you could get sued. Let's go back to our slideshow. So next, I want to talk to you about writing a compelling product description. This is the second vital part in selling online. So here's an example of good and bad product description. The one on the top is from a private seller on eBay, and the bottom one is from shopchuka.com, because these are women's boots. The bottom description is appealing, that appeals to their target market's needs and wants, is very descriptive, and uses keywords that increase search engine optimization. So when you're writing these product descriptions, think about keywords, because that's how people find you on these databases. Keep those things in mind when writing a product description, and read the article, How to Write a Compelling Product Description. And I included that in the follow-up email. I also included a link to 9 ways to write product descriptions and inform and persuade your customers. There are lots of opportunities to better sell products with great descriptions on sites like Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. I've noticed that many sellers on Amazon may not speak English as their primary language, so things get lost in translation. Sometimes they are on the metric system, so they'll describe things in the metric system, where we would describe things in cups, inches, not centimeters, and it makes it tough for people to buy products that way. Always keep your target market in mind when writing these descriptions. These happen to be women's rain boots, so let's think about what attracts the women to these boots. They'll wear these boots, and about their buying behaviors and interests. So if you live in the high desert here, you probably won't be in the market for rain boots very often. Also use those compelling keywords related to your products. Keywords are words that search engines and databases closely associated with a product or service. So if you were talking about rain boots, you might want to use keywords like waterproof, leather, rubber, comfortable, or durable. And Chuka used in their example sleek, plush, waterproof, rubber outer sole, self-cleaning, and rainproof. Perfect. Now we got through online selling. Let's talk about pop-up shops and flea markets. I grouped these together because they have many of the same requirements, and they just cater to two different markets. Pop-ups cater to high-end markets, and flea markets cater to a more general audience. Pop-up shops are a lot of work and take lots of planning because you have to follow state, municipal, and county licensing requirements. Get proper inspections if you need them, purchase insurance, which is optional but vital, and do lots of marketing research and planning. Pop-up shops are usually used by established brands and are a great way to take your product from an online marketplace to a physical storefront for a short amount of time. Or you could test a new product or product bundle, or test a location or demographic. So let's take a deeper dive into permitting and licensing by looking at the Sbdc at UN Valencia's quick start sheet. So I created this sheet. Let's go to the follow-up email. And it's included in the follow-up email right here, quick start guide. Let me make it a little bit bigger so we can all see it. So I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on business start process. So the first step is to choose your business structure. If you're a pop-up shop or an online sales site, you may be a sole proprietor right now. If you're going to go start a pop-up shop, you're going to be at a physical location. You might take on more liability. If you're going to incorporate or become a limited liability corporation, you have to do that through the Secretary of State's office. Once you decide what your business structure is, you need a federal employer identification number. It's free to apply for a federal employer identification number. It's done through the IRS, and it's used on your federal filings. Then this is a must, is a gross receipts tax ID number. If you're going to have a physical presence anywhere or an online presence, you need to file gross receipts tax. And when you use an online marketplace, they often collect and pay gross receipts tax for you. If you have a pop-up shop, you will need to pay gross receipts tax or collect gross receipts tax, file the report, and pay it to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. You also need a CRS number if you plan to apply for a business license. And then you need to apply for either a yearly or a temporary business license in the area where you're going to have a physical presence. So if I was going to have a physical presence in Los Lunas, I have my business is based out of my home. I live in Los Lunas. I'd have to get a Los Lunas business license. If I wanted to do a pop-up shop in Bosque Farms, I'd either have to get a yearly or a temporary vendor permit in Bosque Farms. So it's very important to have a good relationship with your municipal offices. And the requirements for each vary. So if I wanted to park a food truck, say in Los Lunas, they may have different requirements than if I wanted to park a food truck in Mountain View. That I'm telling you, as the towns get smaller, there are probably less requirements. Okay, and I want to tell you the regulations for most municipalities, counties for temporary vendor permits were created in the 1910s and 20s and governed businesses like revivals, traveling carnivals and circuses, and door-to-door salespeople. So this goes to show how long it's been since most places thought about mobile commerce or alternative selling methods. This means government hasn't caught up with commerce, so you must create an effective working relationship with your municipal office or county office. And now let's go back to our slideshow. And then I put some examples on some pop-up shops because they're kind of hard to think about. Let's go back here. So if you're from the Albuquerque metro area, you might see the Spirit Halloween store pop up in a vacant storefront during the Halloween season. They have an online presence all the time, but they pop up into a storefront during that Halloween season. And I think that's a pretty neat one. That's the best example of a pop-up shop I could think of. Let's Go back to our slideshow. So West Elm is an online furniture store. It's furniture and decorating store. And see, they have teamed up with REI. So now they're taking some of their products into REI to sell. They also take some of their products into other high-end department stores to see if they have a market there, or to better team up with these stores to sell, to provide their customers with products that they might need or want. That's a lot of beige in that setup there. Let's close some of these windows. Back to our slideshow. Let's go to Mene. So here's a great article about Mene. What Mene does is they create 24 karat gold jewelry, and they sell online, 365 days a year, but they recently went into Selfridges in London. And if you know anything about Selfridges, it's like the Macy's of London. And they're really trying to see if there's a market for their products there, or the clientele at Selfridges might want this, and the store may not want to go into the market by themselves. They may want to bring them in and create a pop-up shop. That's a great idea. Back to our slideshow. And the most appetizing example and different example of a pop-up shop is the Cheetos pop-up restaurant. And so what Cheetos did, and they did this more for brand awareness than to sell product, but they rented a storefront in the Tribeca area of New York, and they paid a professional chef to make recipes using Cheetos. There she is. And they just allowed people to go into the storefront, purchase their Cheeto recipes. And I thought that was a great way to find a market, to see if their product resonated in that area. And it's a lot of free publicity, because this story was picked up, this was August 2017, but it was picked up by a lot of these newspapers, online news providers and such. And that was the most appetizing of it. But let me tell you, if you wanted to do a pop-up restaurant like that, or a food truck, you'd have to get permitting and inspections. So make sure you're thinking about the back end of that stuff. Let's go to our next slide. So I talked about a lot of research tools. I want to tell you again, marketing is key. Let's see, food trucks. We're on food trucks, not marketing. Research tools, quite yet. So the thing with food trucks is they're permitting intensive, just like pop-up shops. Same kind of permitting, except you have to get a mobile food permit from the New Mexico Department, New Mexico Environment Department. In order to operate a food truck, you need to be in compliance with the New Mexico Department of Health as a mobile kitchen, and this requires using a commercial kitchen as a commissary. After that, you have to find a commercial space to park your food truck, and this means contracting with the property owner or manager, creating a contract to lease the space, and consistently parking in that area. And you should consider a location with lots of traffic and a high concentration of your target market. So going back to permitting requirements, if you don't have a lease for the space to operate a business for the mobile food permit, you may not be able to get a permit in your municipality. So make sure to check with each municipality where you'd like to operate. This type of distribution is great for testing a new product for an established brand, or testing a location for a new business. It's important to make a good working relationship with your chosen area's planning and zoning department, because they could make or break a business idea. I mentioned target market earlier, and you need to draw awareness to your new business, and this means promotion. How are you going to reach your target market, especially if you are in more than one location? You need a website. You want to use social media. You could also do a postcard mailing if you have existing customers, letting them know that you have a food truck now. It just depends on your market research and your needs and wants of your target market. So let's look at some examples of food trucks. Census Tacos. They are on Main Street in Los Lunas, and I see them on my way home on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Their distribution channel, of course, is parking in different locations with their food truck, but they have a website all year round. So I could look at their menu. I could see where they're located. They have consistent locations throughout the Albuquerque metro area. I think that's a great idea. Let's go back to our slideshow. And then some food trucks use solely Facebook or social media as their landing point for their customers. So this one happens to be a waffle restaurant with Love Waffles. Using social media is solely social media is just fine. And with Facebook, you're able to collect reviews, post pictures. You could post event schedules. You could post contact information. So I think that's a great way to do it. And this particular food truck does great with posting very appetizing images of their products. Let's go back to our slideshow, and then let's look at Crazy Dave's. They make hamburgers, and I think they just did a good job with the pictures that they used on Facebook. And then again, you're able to put pictures of your products, services, and the key with using social media is to post consistently and keep your target market's needs and wants in mind. So we got that down. Okay. Now I get to talk to you about research tools. I want to demonstrate some for you, and I'm pretty much a data geek, so I love to do this. I showed you IBIS World. Now let me show you, I want to show you Census Business Builder because that's a free one you could access, but it's been acting up. So let me share my screen. I tried pulling a report this morning when I got into work, about that's 8:15, 9:30 or so, and it's still building. So there's something going on with Census Business Builder or my computer, but let's see if I have a Census Business Builder report that I could show you. So what a Census Business Builder report does is it talks to you about your customers' demographics, socioeconomic characteristics, and you could go into a county, you could go into a zip code, you could go into a municipality. There are different ways of pulling these reports. And if you need help pulling one, you could always consult with me, except Business Builder hasn't been working for the last couple webinars. So let's see what's in a report. Census demographic information about your area, age, race, socioeconomic characteristics, percent disabled, high educational attainment, and the most important, in my opinion, is household income. My rule of thumb for retail or food in a chosen area is the median household income needs to be at or above the national household income. I'm not sure what area I pulled, but this seems to be a little lower than the national income. And remember, I pulled this in 2018. Housing characteristics, so all my tradespeople on the call right now, you'd want to know the value, the median owner occupied housing unit value. And I believe the higher the value, the more your services will be needed. And another one that's good for you is the median year the structure was built. It gives you information about employer businesses, so businesses like yours. If you are in a small town or pulling maybe one zip code, this information isn't going to be very valuable to you. If you're in a more common industry like restaurants, the data might be a little bit more valuable to you. And then my absolute favorite part of these reports are consumer spending, and I think these would be the most helpful for everybody on the call. So if you're going to go into an area, these are stats from 2017. They tell you how yearly household expenditures in certain areas. So let's look, if we wanted to do a food truck, you might want to see how much consumers are spending in this area on breakfast. And it looks like per household per year, they spend about $291.03. If I wanted to find an area where there's a higher expenditure, I could explore this database. Santa Fe might be higher, and then I could see where I could locate this business where there might be a need and want for my product or service. If I was in retail, they go into a lot of retail things like shoes. Yeah, see, men's apparel, women's apparel, footwear, pet services, pet food, household services, and so on and so forth. I think these are really great reports when they work. I want to show you in our databases. So these are databases that you could only access through the Sbdc. The Census Business Builder is free, but it's not working right now for some reason, at least not on my computer. I'm still pulling that report 2.5 hours later. So let's go back to our databases. Let me show you Reference USA. So Reference USA is now Data Excel. Same database, different name. But if I was a business that catered to serving other businesses, remember keeping your creating that ideal target market in mind, the people you most want to promote your product or service to. You could do something like a postcard mailing, or you could do personal selling with this sort of database. So say I sold food products to restaurants. I could look up restaurants and I have all these options. I could do county, a radius from an address, a zip code. Let's do zip code, and we'll do Belen zip code. And then say, it's really hard for me to get into these chain restaurants. Let's see who I could contact, who owns their restaurant, privately owned business. So let's look for that characteristic. It's easier for me to sell my product directly to the business owner. I don't want a home-based business. And 29 businesses pop up. And then when I select them and I go to download, I get a lot more information than what appears on the screen there. So for instance, say I want to market to somebody at the Oasis Cafe. I now have an executive's name, an address, a phone number. I could see what type of restaurants these are. So this happens to be a full service restaurant. Some are limited service, and then some have other characteristics. Maybe they produce food and wholesaling. I could see an estimate of how much that location makes per year. And then if they had different people, like maybe they have a sales or marketing director, they start to list people, like more executives throughout here, and then the social media sites or websites. So that's how that business to business portion could be useful to you. If you're looking for supplies from somebody, your supply chain has been disrupted, this is also a good way to find new suppliers. And now let me show you the one that will really, I think, tickle everybody's fancy on the call today. It's the Consumer Lifestyles database. And remember, when we're looking at those reports, we look at estimated home value, that's our tradespeople, or estimated home income, that's our retail restaurant market. So let's look at estimated home incomes. Let's do one contact per household. Most of these reports will say that households of $100,000 or more for retail or restaurants are your target markets. I can't do these consumer snapshots because I can't pull addresses, but I could give you a number of people in an area. But the lifestyle characteristics are important. So maybe I'm selling something related to fitness. I could choose some characteristics there. And then I could do a zip code, metro area, city, state, county. Let's do 87103. 87031, which is Los Unas. And then I'm able to find 826 households or people who match that description. And say I mentioned a postcard mailing. I could send a postcard to these addresses. I cannot call or email these people unless I purchase this list from Data Excel. The list run about $1,000 for 5,000 contacts. And then this is a really nice hot list for me because I know the people on this list have high incomes and are interested in the product or service that I'm selling. I could also see where they're located on a map. If you're in a small area like Los Lunas, it's not very, with one zip code, it's not too very helpful. If you're in a place like Albuquerque with multiple zip codes, I could see which zip code these households with $100,000 incomes and interest in fitness are. But it looks like I'd probably want to station somewhere throughout Los Lunas, and we only have one main street that goes across the river, so probably Main Street. And those are the data tools I wanted to cover with you today. I have access to something called Mintel marketing reports, and they're just like they're reports put together by professional marketers that talk about trends in an industry. If you want more information about that, put that in the Q&A. Let's go back to our slideshow. I want to leave some time at the end to answer questions, so I'm going to try to go through these next few slides a little bit more quickly than I usually do. So many people come to my office and tell me that social media marketing is going to change their business outcomes, but that's far from the truth. I want to show you the when and why about social media marketing by concentrating on Facebook, since that's what I'm most familiar with. So before you begin any social media marketing effort, do market research and put intense thought into your target markets. So those Mintel marketing reports, they will tell you what kind of media your target market's after. If you don't know who you're serving and what they like, you'll have no success on social media. And the target market on Facebook tends to be women 35 to 55 years with higher incomes and typical consumer interests. If you have a retail store or restaurant, this is a great place to start. When you dive into a social media marketing platform, think about using their paid advertising services and learn how to use them. And I wanted to do a demonstration for you, but put that in the Q&A if you want me to demonstrate how to use the paid features in Facebook. But Facebook has a great learning center called Facebook Blueprint that is included in the follow-up email. And they have a wholesalers academy on how to use Facebook to better sell products and services. And there it is right there, facebook.com/business/learn. Some other helpful resources are listed on the slide. My favorite and most practical is Google My Business. And I showed you a little bit about how to take advantage of that. So let's go down the list. Social Media Examiner is a blog that features social media marketing experts, and they give great advice. New Mexico Internet Entrepreneurs is a great Facebook group created by Barb Tomlin as a forum for New Mexico Internet entrepreneurs to connect, get helpful tips, and post new ideas. The NMSBDC and SBA websites have numerous free learning opportunities, useful articles, and great documents. So please visit these websites and take advantage and put your taxpayer dollars to work. If you need an attorney, the New Mexico Bar Association keeps a database of attorneys who pass the bar and are able to practice in the state of New Mexico. And they also have a referral program. And New Mexico COGS, or Council of Governments, keeps traffic counts. So if you want to see, if there is a stretch of road, you want to see how many weekday travelers are on it or daily travelers travel that stretch of road, you could do that on, at least for the New Mexico, Albuquerque metro area on New Mexico COGS. And I also put some links to some helpful websites, the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department website if you have more questions about gross receipts tax, and the IRS Self-Employed and Small Business Tax Center, which has a great webinar called Small Business Taxes, the Virtual Workshop. And it'll give you everything you need to know about your federal tax liabilities. Also has a great link for applying for that EIN number. And since this is a COVID-sponsored webinar, I have a listing here on this slide of all the most accurate and up-to-date links related to COVID-19 safe practices. The first link is to the New Mexico Department of Health's guidance for employers. The second link is for New Mexico Safe Certified program, and this is a free interactive learning module about how businesses should operate during COVID-19. It's most helpful for probably restaurants or food service. The third link is OSHA's publication on employer COVID-19 safe practices. The fourth link is information about COVID-19 from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The fifth link, and most important in my view, is an article by the EEOC, or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, called What You Should Know About COVID-19, the ADA and the Rehabilitation Act, and other EEO laws. We are in an ever more litigious society, so it's a must read for everybody on the call today. Finally, the sixth link is for the newmexico.gov website, where you could find the most up-to-date state information related to COVID-19, as well as lending and grant opportunities. Right now, the best grant opportunity out there is the LIDA recovery grants. They are based on employment, so take a look at those in the newmexico.gov website. And they're also administered through the New Mexico Finance Authority, so you could visit the New Mexico Finance Authority website directly. Perfect. Now that we talked about how we can help you, this is how you could help the Sbdc. As part of offering our services, we need your help to ensure our services are around for many more years to come. So we ask that you participate in our surveys, report economic impacts because of our assistance to your advisor or director, and write a letter of support to your local legislators about your experience with the Sbdc. All information is kept confidential and is only reported in aggregate to our funders, the state of New Mexico, and the Small Business Administration. We went over a lot of information, so let's review what we learned, and I'll go over the key points with you. Number one, market research and planning is important. You now have the resources you need to make better educated marketing decisions. So take an hour each month or every 6 months to use the SBA marketing plan template to make a plan. 2, know your target market or markets. This is the least you must do before you spend any time or money on promotional activities. 3, do you have the skills to set up and manage an online store? Now that you know the major activities involved, does this seem like something you can or want to do? 4, did you think online selling was so labor intensive? Well, now you know. So do you have the staff to answer customer questions, ship, and handle returns? 5, if you want to start a pop-up shop, are you able to meet the state and municipal or county requirements and tax obligations for your venture? 6, and most importantly, are you prepared to handle the extra cleaning requirements, mandatory capacity limits, and ever-changing regulations for our public safety? What if your pop-up shop had to close for 2 weeks because somebody tested positive for COVID-19? How would that affect your venture? So a little bit of disaster planning is involved in all new businesses now. We're doing pretty good on time. This is the first time I've actually done well on time. So this slide provides contact information for Sbdc programs, PTAC, or the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, IBA, or the International Business Accelerator, and the New Mexico Tech Technology Commercialization Accelerator. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center is a government-funded program providing assistance to small businesses who want to sell their goods or services to the government, educational institutions, or tribal entities. The International Business Accelerator is a one-stop shop of resources for New Mexican businesses and individuals wishing to introduce their product or service into the global market. And the New Mexico Tech Technology Commercialization Accelerator offers no-cost confidential counseling regarding intellectual property. Oops, I think I went too fast. Now I went way too fast. Let's go. Let me end my slideshow and start from the resources that I was introducing to you. Okay, so here's PTAC, IBA, and the NMTTCA. So here's those resources. I got ahead of myself here on the slideshow. Next, this slide continues the list of small business resource partners. SCORE, or the Service Corps of Retired Executives, WEST, or the Women's Business Center, and VBOC, or the Veterans Business Outreach Center. Okay, this slide, and then we're going to continue our resources here. This is your small business support team. We are funded by the SBA, and many people ask about SBA loans. And I included a link to the SBA's resource guide here. And on page 27, 20, 29, 32, I was off by one. On page 33, this guide explains the different types of loan guarantees available through the Small Business Administration. Let's go back here. The New Mexico Economic Development Department has a lot of information about tax incentives or grant programs available to new businesses. And of course, the Small Business Development Center. Okay, we got through that in record time. We're doing pretty good. Let me open up that Q&A. And type your questions in. If you want to speak, raise your hand and I'll allow you to speak. So my first question is from Michael. Do we have to ask the Sbdc for a data Excel report, or is it available to the public? It is only available through your Sbdc advisor. It's a paid database. More incentives to reach out to your local Sbdc for counseling. Okay, let me look at our participants, see if anybody on the call wants to speak. If not, feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A. I went over a lot of information with everybody on the call. So while I wait for a question, let me bring up the follow-up email. Let me look and see if is there something in that follow-up email that I didn't talk about. Here's the document, Choosing a Business Entity. It gives you more insights on the laws you're governed under as a small business owner and the pros and cons of different business entities, sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLCs, corporations. Here's SBA's Marketing Plan and Marketing 101. There's the eBay Seller Center, Etsy Seller Handbook. An Etsy Seller's Handbook, if you're going to sell online at all, I think it's the best guide for selling online in general, especially when it comes to photography, shipping, and a little bit of good legal practices, a little bit about intellectual property and whatnot. I think they did the best job overall on selling online in general. So take a look at that for sure. Let's go back to our follow-up email. If you're interested in starting a food truck, there's the City of Albuquerque's Food Truck Permitting Guide. If you could comply with Albuquerque's regulations, you could comply almost anywhere in the state. Here's contact information for the New Mexico Environment Department. Here, there are 2 articles on pop-up shops, research tools, COGS interactive traffic counts map. Let me make sure this link works because it was giving me trouble yesterday. So you go to traffic flows maps, access the interactive map. And this is for the Middle Rio Grande Council of Governments. There's a Council of Governments for the East, West, North, South. So make sure you're at your correct COG. If you're in the Albuquerque metro area, any of the roads highlighted, and even some of the non-highlighted roads, they keep traffic counts for. So this is McLeod, let's see, right off of San Pedro. We could see that there are 6,146 people who drive down that street on the daily, and the average weekday there are 6,769. So this is very helpful information. Say you wanted to start a pop-up shop or a food truck. Let's look at one of the busier roads. These are usually highlighted yellow or red. Montgomery Boulevard off of Louisiana Montgomery. Alo Modi, and excuse my New Mexico term there. There are 40,457 average weekday traffic count for this stretch of road on Montgomery between Louisiana and Pennsylvania. Might be a great place for a pop-up shop, food truck. Okay, I'm going to stop share, put my face on the screen. I'm going to go back to the Q&A. I don't see any questions. I don't see any attendees with their hands raised. So I'll stay for another few minutes if you have any questions. Okay, how will this webinar resource information be received? That's a great question. Sorry, I opened Paint instead of the. I'm going to email it to my list. I'm going to email it to everybody on the email they registered for this webinar under. And you should receive that in a couple of days. I'll try to do it right after this webinar if I have time. Perfect. Anybody who, thank you for spending time with me today. If you are ready to leave, you could go right ahead and leave. If you have any questions for me, I'll be on for just a bit longer. Thank you. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. John, I saw your hand raised. If you'd like to speak, you are on mute, but you're welcome to unmute and speak.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I'm not John. He's at home taking care of the dog, so I'm here. Now, we've got a company. We've had some success, but a little bit mostly local. Now, will all these things help us expand it so it's statewide or nationwide then?
What kind of businesses?
It's photography.
So you do like weddings and stuff like that?
Well, we try to stay away from weddings. We do landscape, or we can do portrait, or we can do business or corporations or buildings or products, anything else, but we try to stay away from weddings. We've done enough of those.
Well, I would I suggest sitting down with your counselor, but I would want to pull a IBIS World report, and I pulled one on photography before. The number one product or service is weddings.
Is it
still? So my suggestion would probably be getting back into weddings, advertising to your target market, which would be future brides, probably in higher incomes. So you could do maybe a postcard mailing, whatever you think would be effective for brides or soon to be married couples. And then probably claiming your Google My Business area would be the best bet for you. But if you wanna set up an appointment, talk over that a little further, we could pull some research and we could answer a little bit more questions.
Have an appointment. Okay, we have an appointment next week, Wednesday, with somebody from Sbdc to meet in person.
Perfect. And anybody throughout the state can advise with you. So if you want to bring me in to talk a little bit more about Google My Business or alternative selling methods, that's my specialty. Ask them to set up an appointment with me and I'll be happy to speak with you and your advisor.
Good, that's great. How do I get in touch with you?
Just go through your advisor when you meet with them. We're a pretty
Okay.
small group. There are less than 40 or 50 people in the Sbdc network. So, and we all meet once a year. So they should all be, we're pretty familiar with each other.
Oh, that'd be great. Yes, I never heard of that Google My Business. Is that something new?
It's been around for since about 2011.
Oh.
And,
wow.
but it hasn't really been used till about 2015, 2016. And our mayor here in Belen, we have a pretty young mayor. He was really progressive in the fact he wanted all the businesses down Main Street to be on Google My Business and started promoting that rather early. But, I could provide technical assistance on that. I know our Santa Fe Center is versed in that. A lot of centers throughout have the certification in that Google My Business. It's a pretty neat tool.
It sounds like I'll have to look at that then and see what it says about us.
Yeah, take a look at it and you could claim it and you could make adjustments to it.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate that.
No problem. Thanks for your question. I'm going to take back your ability to speak, but raise your hand again if you have anything you want to say. Okay, you all, I think I talked enough about this topic. If you have any more questions, you're welcome to reach out for me. Reach out to your local center. I'd be happy to sit in on a meeting with you, and I will give you back a few minutes of your time, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.